The year is 1786, and in the great brick house at the end of the mall, the one the king bought for his queen, so that she might have somewhere plainer than a palace to be happy in, the lamps are being lit one story at a time. It is a little past 8 on an October evening. The park outside is going blue, the last riders walking their horses home under the elms, and the house, they call it the Queen's house, though the maps still say Buckingham House, stands in its own quiet like a country manor that has wandered into London and decided to stay. It is not Versailles. We kept one night in Versailles together, you and I, all gold and mirrors and 10,000 candles. This house would fit into a corner of that one and be lost. That is precisely how the king and queen prefer it. Behind those tall first-floor windows there are books instead of throne rooms, a harpsichord, a backgammon board, a work table with the Queen's embroidery lying where she left it. And up the plain oak backstairs on the second floor, a small room with a small fire, where a widowed gentlewoman in grey silk is drinking a last dish of tea before the longest, quietest, strangest shift in England begins. Call her Mrs. Allenby. She is one of the women of the bedchamber to Queen Charlotte. 6 of them there are, ladies of good family and small fortune, who serve the Queen in rotation, a week at a time. And tonight begins her week of what the household calls her waiting. For the next 7 nights, she will sleep, when she sleeps at all, in the little chamber beside the Queen's own. She will be the last person to bid the Queen good night and the first to bid her good morning. And through the hours between, while the house and the kingdom lie unconscious, she will be the one appointed soul awake on the Queen's side of the door. The office is nearly as old as Queen's. The pay is modest, the hours are absurd, the tea is excellent, and the work, when you strip away the curtsies and the diamonds and the etiquette book solemnity of it, is the work this channel has kept beside all year. To be steady and kind and awake at the still centre of a sleeping house, so that someone else may close their eyes in perfect trust. So come up the back stairs with her, softly past the page dozing on his bench, past the smell of beeswax and snuffed candles, and let us keep the ladies' watch from the inside. The cards and the couche, the jewels put to bed in their boxes, the state bed nobody sleeps in and the plain one somebody does, the candle that burns all night in a silver basin, and the long gentle hours when a bedchamber the size of a barn holds nothing but a clock, a fire, and 2 women breathing. Nothing frightening happens tonight. Nothing frightening is allowed within 3 rooms of here. The doors are watched, the fires are guarded, and the whole art of the household you are about to meet is the manufacture of one commodity, an untroubled night. And if stories like this help you drift off, subscribing helps me keep the nightlight burning. Settle back, let your book fall shut, and take your place in the watching chair. Begin with the word itself, because the word is the key to the whole palace. Waiting. A lady in waiting waits not as we wait for an omnibus, drumming our fingers, but in the old deep sense the word had when English was young. To watch, to attend, to be present and prepared. The waiting men of a medieval lord were the ones who stayed awake by the hall fire. The lady who waits upon a queen belongs to the same ancient guild as every keeper this channel has ever sat, beside the same guild as the innkeeper listening for the night mail, the nanny in her rocking chair, the porter at his lamp, those who are paid, in coin and in honour, to be awake on behalf of the sleeping. Court makes it ceremonious. It dresses the watch in silk and gives it precedence and a table of ranks. But underneath the silk it is the watch, and the ladies know it. Half asleep at 2 in the morning in the chair beside the Queen's door, hearing rain on the park and the watchman's slow call from the court below, Mrs. Allenby is nearer to a lighthouse keeper than to anything in a fashion plate. Now the ranks gently, because they matter to everyone in this house and to nobody else on earth, which is one of the sweetest things about court. At the top, the mistress of the robes, A duchess always, head of all the Queen's ladies. A great officer of state who appears on the great days, walks nearest the Queen in processions, and is troubled with almost nothing so ordinary as a bedtime. Beneath her, the ladies of the bedchamber, countesses mostly, one in waiting at a time, who attend the Queen's public day, the drawing rooms, the chapel, the airings in the park. Beneath them, and here the silk gets sensible, the women of the bedchamber, Mrs. Allonby's own rank, 6 gentlewomen who do the actual, human, hands and hairpins work of attendance. They lay out the Queen's things and put them away. They pour her chocolate, they read to her, they carry her snuff box, they sit up. And youngest of all, the Maids of Honour. 6 girls of good family, 19 or 20, unmarried, salaried, romantic, perpetually hungry, who attend the Queen in public, hold her train when trains are held, and are, as every memoir of the age agrees, the laughter of the household and the despair of its governess. Tonight one of them, Miss Feversham, 19, in her first year of waiting, has begged leave to sit up with Mrs. Allonby for an hour of the watch to learn how it is done, and through this night she will be our second pair of eyes, the night seen once by a woman who has kept it 200 times, and once by a girl keeping it almost for the first. And the Queen they all serve, Charlotte, wife of George III these 25 years, mother of a very great many children, a small, sensible, musical woman who takes snuff, loves her needlework and her botany, keeps country hours in the middle of London, and runs the quietest court in Europe. Foreign visitors, expecting Versailles, are astonished into rudeness by the plainness of it. The King dines on mutton and turnips. The Queen's evenings are cards and a concert of her own musicians, and the whole vast machinery of monarchy is wound down most nights by 11 o'clock. The wits of London call it dull. The household who remember other reigns and have read of other courts call it, privately, the best waiting in Europe. Regular as a farm, sober as a parsonage, kind as a good family. Dullness in a palace is the rarest luxury of all. It takes 150 servants to produce it fresh every single day. While the ladies finish their tea below, remember how each of them arrived, because nobody is born in waiting. Every woman in this house was once a girl in a country parlour, hearing the news read out from a letter with a seal on it. A place at court is got the way most good things in this century are got, by family, by friendship, and by a long patient siege of politeness. A father who served the crown, an aunt who was herself a woman of the bedchamber and grew old in it, a letter written on your behalf by a countess to a duchess, mentioning lightly, as if it hardly mattered, that Miss So-and-so is sensible, musical, discreet, and of an age to serve. Then the waiting to be in waiting, months of it, sometimes years, while places are promised and health is drunk, and somewhere in the deep machinery of the household an old lady decides to retire to Bath. And then at last the summons. An interview, not an examination. Nothing so vulgar a conversation with tea, in which a girl is looked at kindly and closely by women who are very good indeed at looking, and what they are looking for is not beauty and not wit, but something quieter, whether her hands are calm, whether her voice is low, whether she can sit still without sulking and talk without needing to be listened to, whether, in short, she is restful. It is the same quality the ages have looked for in a night nurse, in a keeper, in anyone to be trusted near sleep, and the great households have always known how to find it. For the family at home, the appointment is a triumph and a bereavement in one envelope, a salary modest but hers, a footing at court that may lift her brothers and marry her sisters, and a daughter gone, as surely as if she had wed, into a world of hours and rules the family will never see. The stagecoach that brings a new maid of honour to London brings the same cargo every year of this century. One small trunk of made-over gowns, one letter of thanks half written in her head, and one heart beating very hard under a travelling cloak, going to live with the Queen. Miss Feversham came up in April. She has learned so far the names and precedents of some 4 dozen persons, the geography of 3 royal houses, how to stand for 2 hours in a drawing room without visibly perishing, and where the housekeeper hides the good biscuits. Tonight she adds the last mystery: what happens after the doors are shut. The Queen's evening is as fixed as the stars, and it is the gentlest public ritual in the kingdom. Dinner was at 4 and was mutton. The king has ridden. The younger princesses have been down for their hour with their parents. You have kept a night in a royal nursery with me once, and the customs are cousins to those we knew. And by 8, the family and household assemble in the Queen's apartments for the evening, which is to say, for cards and music, the 2 great engines of 18th century quiet. At the card tables, the elder members of the household play at whist for stakes so small they are almost theoretical. The Queen works at her embroidery frame or plays her own hand, and at the end of the room the concert begins, the King's band, a dozen musicians in a house that keeps more musicians than footmen. Handel mostly, for the King will hear Handel as some men will hear no argument, and the slow airs succeed one another like clouds crossing a mild sky. Nobody performs at anybody. The music is furniture, the best furniture in England, and under it the room hums with the low, unhurried talk of people who have known each other for decades and will meet again at breakfast. Mrs. Allonby sits a little back from the circle with her own needlework, in waiting present, prepared, largely invisible, entirely content. This is the paradox of her trade, that the memoirs all confess sooner or later. The work is mostly a kind of alert leisure. One is never off duty and rarely doing anything. One is furniture that watches. A cup wants filling. A shawl is fetched before it is asked for. The Queen's snuff box, she is famous for her snuff, keeps a whole small cabinet of it, has a favourite mixture ground fine and moistened to her own receipt, passes from the table to the royal hand at exactly the moment the royal hand begins to think of it. That is the whole art, to think half a minute ahead of comfort, all evening, every evening, for years. Done badly, it looks like hovering. Done well, it looks like nothing at all. It simply seems, to the served, that the world is a warm and frictionless place in which whatever one wants is somehow already there. Every good servant in every age has known this art. The bedchamber merely polishes it to its highest gloss. At 10 the tea comes in, the household's own last tea, handed round by the pages, and this is the hinge of the evening, the moment the public day begins to fold itself away. The card scores are settled in sixpences. The musicians, released, pack their instruments with the soft knocking sounds of cases that have closed on 10,000 evenings. The equerries bow themselves out toward their own supper and their own sitting room, where the talk will get louder and the jokes older. The elder princesses kiss hands and go up to their apartments, trailing maids like comet tails. By 10:30, the drawing room holds only the fire, the servants putting out candles behind a departing family, and the long settling silence of a room that has done its day's work. The Queen has gone through to her own side of the house, and on that side, in the candlelight, the true and ancient business of the night is about to begin. The ceremony the French call the coucher, the putting of a queen to bed, which this plain English court performs without an audience, without a rail, without a single duke holding a candlestick, and which is none the less for the women whose office it is, as exact as a liturgy and as old as crowns. Hold the coucher a moment at the door, and remember the day it closes, because a bedtime is only the last line of a page, and the Queen's page is worth reading. She rises early country hours, 6 in summer, and the morning is chocolate and prayers, and the schoolroom reports of a nursery full of children, whose lessons she follows the way other monarchs follow armies. Then the toilette, of which more when we come to its mirror image tonight. Then the day's audiences and airings, and 3 times a week, the drawing rooms at St. James's, for this house is for living, but ceremony still lives at the old palace up the mall, and the Queen goes to her own court like a woman going out to an office. But thread through all of it, every day, the small fixed private pleasures that make her, in the household's word, easy. The snuff first, her one luxury, taken all day from boxes that are the only jeweled things she carries by choice. The dogs, little spaniels underfoot in every private room, banned from precisely nowhere, fed from the royal hand at the royal work table. The needlework, which is not a pastime but a discipline she believes idle hands unqueenly, and her daughters sew shirts for the poor, as other princesses have embroidered banners. The botany, her herbarium, her correspondence about seeds, the gardens at Kew that she and the king walk like two squires inspecting a beloved farm. And the friendships won above all, which the whole age found touching, and we may too. Mrs. Delany, a widowed gentlewoman of great age and no fortune, the finest paper artist in England she invented, past 70, an art of cut paper botanical mosaics so exact that botanists consult them, whom the King and Queen simply, quietly adopted. A house at Windsor, a pension, a place by the fire whenever she chooses to fill it. The royal children run to her as to a grandmother. The Queen sits with her by the hour, 2 needlewomen talking of plants and grandchildren, while the greatest empire on earth governs itself down the road. Court memoirs are famously full of thorns. The pages about Mrs. Delany are the pages where every memoirist goes soft. It is worth remembering, on our way to the bedchamber, that this is the texture of the court we are keeping tonight. A queen whose notion of splendor is an old friend, a good fire, fine thread, and everybody home by 11. Sleep comes easily to such houses. It was designed to stay by the concert a little, because music is not an entertainment in this house, it is the climate. The king's private band, his own establishment of players, salaried like footmen and cherished like racehorses, performs every evening the family is at home, and its repertoire is a monarchy in itself. Handel at the head, always Handel, the king's lifelong passion, whose oratorios he knows the way clergymen know scripture, and whose scores he collects in manuscript with a collector's tender greed. Then Corelli, Gemignani, the grave old Italians, and, admitted carefully, the moderns. The Queen's taste runs newer and southerly. She brought her music from Mecklenburg, as she brought her linen, and in her first London years, her music master was John Christian Bach, youngest son of the great Sebastian, the most fashionable composer in England then, who taught her accompaniment and wrote for her, and made the Queen's house for a decade the warmest room in Europe for a travelling musician. The household still tells of the smallest of those travellers, a Salzburg child of 8, brought by his father, who played for the King and Queen one summer evening 20 years ago, sight-read everything the King could put on the rack, improvised upon the Queen's air, and climbed onto the Queen's lap when he had done Little Wolfgang, whose name the musical gentlemen now speak with a certain awe, grown into the first master of the age. This room heard him first in England. Rooms remember such things. The household certainly does. And below and around the band's evening voice, the house keeps lesser musics the way a wood keeps birdsong. The princesses at their practice harpsichord and singing masters attend the elder ones daily, and on good afternoons the schoolroom corridor is a soft crossfire of scales. The Queen at her own instrument in the private hour after breakfast playing for nobody, which the pages agree is the best listening in the house precisely because it is overheard. The chapel choir on Sundays, boys' voices under the painted ceiling, the equerries' table, late, attempting glees with more courage than intonation, a housemaid singing on the attic stair, hushed by the housekeeper, missed by everyone when hushed. Music, the age believes, is furniture for the mind. It settles a room as surely as a good fire, and this family has built its whole evening architecture upon that belief. Cards for the hands, work for the eyes, handle for the deep of the head, and by the end of the slow airs, half the drawing room is breathing to the music's tempo, which is, of course, the design. The band's last piece each night is chosen soft on purpose. The house is being played toward its bed nightly by professionals, and tonight, hours later in the watching chair, Mrs. Allonby will find an air from the evening still turning gently in her ear. The way music stays in houses, in walls, in wool and wood, long after the cases are shut. The day's last servant, still on duty, humming the sleepers down. Before the bedchamber claims us, remember the public stage this private night supports, because 3 mornings a week the Queen goes up the Mall to the old palace of St. James's and holds her drawing room, and the drawing room is the strangest, stateliest, most gently absurd institution in England. It is, in essence, a queue, the nobility and gentry of the kingdom in their very best, filing through a series of tapestried rooms to bow or curtsy to the King and Queen, and exchange with them 1 or 2 sentences apiece. That is all. That is the whole event. And for that, the whole apparatus of the age is set in motion. The sedan chairs and carriages jamming St. James's Street from noon. The hoops for court dress is frozen fashion, and ladies come to the drawing room in the vast side hoops of 40 years ago, 6 feet from hip to hip, that survive nowhere else on earth, so that a girl of 18 makes her first curtsy dressed partly as her grandmother. The lappets of lace, regulation deep. The gentlemen in embroidered velvet with dress swords they must manage like unfamiliar tails. The plumes, the trains, the paste and the true diamonds indistinguishable by candlelight, and everyone knowing exactly which was which by other means entirely. To be presented a girl's first curtsy to her sovereign is the hinge of a whole female lifetime in this age, rehearsed for weeks with a dancing master, the deep court curtsy that goes down and down with the head held level, the backing out of the royal presence one may not turn one's back, managed in 6 feet of hoop and 3 of train. A feat of navigation the Maids of Honour grade among themselves like connoisseurs at the ringside. The Queen stands through it all, hours of it, saying the right small thing to each of 400 people she is renowned for remembering families, marriages, sons at sea. And this, the household knows, is the true weight of the crown. Not gold, but attention. Hours of undivided, gracious, upright attention paid out one face at a time. It is why the evenings are quiet. It is why the bedtime is sacred. A queen who has stood 4 hours being looked at by a kingdom has earned the room where nobody looks at all. And Mrs. Allonby's place in the drawing-room machinery is behind it. The women of the bedchamber dress the Queen for the stage, but do not stand upon it. That is the lady's office, the countess's hour, and so drawing-room days have for her the pleasant backstage rhythm all theatre people know, the enormous labour of the toilette, hoop and train and jewels and plumes assembled like a ship rigged for launching, the departure, the odd holiday quiet of the emptied apartments, and then the return at 4, the whole rigging struck again, the Queen shrinking gratefully back to her own size, the great hoop carried away sideways through the doors by 2 women like a section of garden fence, and the first ordinary cup of tea drunk in the first ordinary chair with the sigh of a woman released from architecture. Ceremony, the bedchamber teaches, is a costume the monarchy wears for the kingdom's sake. The night is when it is allowed to be a family. You are visiting at night. It is the better visit. Now the doors. The Queen's private apartments are a sequence, an antechamber, a dressing room, the bedchamber itself, with the wardrobe rooms and the little chamber of the woman in waiting opening off it, and as the Queen passes through them at 11:15, the public world falls away layer by layer like the day's clothes. In the dressing room the night's small congregation assembles, Mrs. Allonby in waiting, the wardrobe woman, Mrs. Yardley, mistress of pins and tissue paper, a chambermaid with the warming pan, already gone ahead to the bed. No lords, no spectators. The English coucher is a working ceremony, not a performance. Versailles put a queen to bed the way a city stages an opera. This house does it the way a good farm stables a beloved horse. Exactly, gently, the same every night, by people who know their business with their eyes shut. The order of it never varies, and the never varying is the point. The jewels first, earrings, rings, the small diamonds of an ordinary evening, each into its case, each case into the strongbox Mrs. Yardley carries to the wardrobe room. The great pieces, the crown diamonds, live elsewhere under other locks and other men. Then the gown, unlaced down the back with the particular soft percussion of a stay lace drawn through worked eyelets, eased off, borne away over Mrs. Yardley's arms like a resting swan. The stays themselves, and every woman in the kingdom knows this precise nightly deliverance. The first full breath of the night as the busk comes away. The pins, dozens of them, harvested from bodice and stomacher and hair into a china dish with the sound like tiny rain. The hair taken down from its cushion and rolls, brushed out long and grey and private. The Queen wears no wig, only her own hair dressed high, brushed by Mrs. Allonby, with the slow, even strokes that are the oldest sedative in the world, while the Queen sits with her eyes half shut and the fire ticks and nobody says anything that matters. A Queen's day is made of being looked at. Her bedtime is the daily ceremony of becoming, for 8 hours, invisible. The nightgown then plain lawn, warmed at the fire. The nightcap tied, a shawl for the last half hour. She will say her prayers at the little desk, privately, in German as often as English, for one prays fastest in one's mother tongue. And the woman in waiting moves about the room meanwhile in the last offices, the bed turned down, the warming pan drawn out at the perfect moment, the night table set, the watch in its stand, the handkerchief, the book, the little glass of barley water and the candles put out one by one until the room has come down to firelight and a single flame. Through the small door, Mrs. Yardley has just carried the gown, lies a country the public never sees. The wardrobe rooms, the bedchambers, engine room, the linen country of this house, cousin to every below-stairs kingdom we have walked together. Presses of cedar and walnut stand in ranks with their doors shut on the Queen's wardrobe, the court gowns in their linen shrouds, laid in tissue with lavender and orris root. The everyday sacques and round gowns on their pegs, drawer upon drawer of lace lappets, ruffles, tuckers, each piece papered like something between a relic and a pressed flower. The fans in their boxes, the shoes in their bags, the stays on their stands, the hoops hung like bird cages from the beams. Everything numbered, everything listed, for the wardrobe keeps books as strict as a counting house. What came in, what was worn, what was mended, what was given away. Mrs. Yardley can find any yard of ribbon in the dark and does, roughly, weekly, and the wardrobe explains something about the wages of waiting that the salary alone never could. The perquisites. By ancient custom of the office, the Queen's cast off clothes and a Queen casts off, by the standards of a gentlewoman, magnificently descend to her women. A court gown worn thrice, silk enough to remake into 2 gowns and a cloak, lace that would cost a parson's whole living, lengths and remnants and ribbons in a steady, soft rain. Some are worn, made over, some are sold. There is a thriving, honest trade in London in court silk at second hand, and everybody knows it and nobody minds. A lady's maid's fortune, said the age, hangs in her mistress's closet. It is not corruption, it is the 18th century's way of paying wages partly in kind, and it knits the wardrobe country together in a web of passed-down finery. The seamstress in her attic tonight is hemming a petticoat cut from a gown that stood 2 years ago in candlelight before a throne. Queen Charlotte, careful in everything, is generous in this. Her women do not grow rich, but they are, as the saying goes, the best-dressed economists in England. The press is close, the strong box is locked. The day's silk is folded into darkness. In the bedchamber, the last candle but one is out. One small ceremony of the coucher deserves its own remembering: the pins. The china dish on the dressing table received, tonight as every night, its little harvest, the dozens of straight brass pins that held bodice to stomacher, kerchief to shoulder, cap to hair. For the 18th century gown has almost no fastenings of its own, no rows of buttons, no hooks worth the name. A lady is assembled each morning, pinned together like a work of upholstery by hands that know the map, and disassembled each night into silk, linen, and a rain of metal. And the pins matter, were once indeed money. Pins in their beginnings were smithwork, wire drawn and pointed and headed by hand, dear enough that a paper of good pins made a respectable present, and a lady's allowance for such small necessities took its name from them: pin money. The sum settled on a wife for her own private spending, written into marriage contracts by lawyers who had long forgotten the pins themselves, argued over in courts, and surviving in the language to this day, centuries after the thing it bought became cheap. There is a whole quiet history of womankind folded into that phrase, and the bedchamber, which handles more actual pins than any room in the kingdom, tells it with a certain proprietary relish. The age when a paper of pins was a love token, the peddlers crying pins at fair time, the pin makers' workshops where the trade was divided into its famous 18 operations, one man drawing the wire, another pointing, another heading the little industry the philosophers now cite when they lecture on the division of labor, so that the pin has become, of all things, the schoolroom example of the modern world being born. All that in the china dish, gleaming by candlelight. Mrs. Yardley counts them out of habit. Pins wander, and a pin in a royal bed is the kind of small catastrophe the office exists to make impossible, folds them into their paper, and the day's little silver harvest goes back into service tomorrow, as it will go on doing morning and night, pin by pin, reign after reign, holding the whole visible dignity of the kingdom together at the shoulder seam. Great houses run on great treasuries, the saying might go, but they are fastened with brass pins, and the bedchamber knows which of the two it would sooner run out of last. Since we have watched the pins come out, remember the arts that put them in the toilette, the 18th century's great daily craft, half dressing and half diplomacy, which surrounds this bedchamber the way the workshop surrounds the finished clock. Begin with the hair, because the age does. The Queen's is dressed daily over a cushion, a pad of wool on which the hair is raised and rolled and pinned into the smooth high architecture of the day by hands that have done it so long they could do it in the dark, and on state days by the hairdresser proper, a professional artist with his own bag of irons and his own opinions, who arrives like a physician and is treated like one. Powder finishes it, the fine scented starch dust, white or faintly grey, shaken and blown on with the lady defended by a powdering gown and a paper cone held to the face. Every fine house has its powdering closet for exactly this snowstorm, and the Queen's is off the dressing room, a little room that smells permanently of orris root, the violet sweet iris powder that is the base note of the whole age. Understand powder and you understand half the century's look. It is not disguise but finish, a soft grey unifying bloom over every head, high or humble, that makes candlelit rooms full of people look like rooms full of portraits. The face is its own craft, and this court practices it temperately. A wash of rosewater or elderflower, a little rouge for great occasions, for entirely bare cheeks rid as illness by candlelight, powder again, the merest veil. The perilous whites of the past age, the lead pastes that ruined the skin they promised to perfect, are passing out of sensible use, and this Queen's plain habits lead the retreat. Her daughters are being raised on soap, water, air, and walking. the new English doctrine of the complexion. Cleanliness itself is in revolution, quietly. Clean linen is its engine. A person of quality in this age may bathe seldom, but shifts and shirts change daily or twice daily, and the whiteness of linen at throat and wrist is the true advertised hygiene, which is why the laundry is the largest industry of every great house, and why the wardrobe's snowy shelves we visited are a kind of bank vault. Teeth are brushed with root brushes and tooth powder. Hands are the tell of a lady and are creamed and gloved accordingly. And scent, this house being this house, is modest. Lavender water, Hungary water, a little rose. No civic clouds, no ambergris fog. The Queen dislikes heavy perfume, and the whole court therefore smells agreeably of ironed linen, orris and tea. And the Toilette's furniture deserves one lamplit look. Because tonight it sleeps under muslin on the dressing table, the service of silver and cut glass boxes, bottles, brushes, the mirror with its silver frame that is one of the age's canonical wedding gifts and heirlooms, engraved, inventoried, polished nightly, the domestic altar of the entire art. By day it is the busiest square yard in the apartments. By night, shrouded, it is as quiet as the state bed, and the two of them keep their parallel vigils, the furniture of being seen, resting, while the business of being asleep goes gently forward next door. Every ceremony in this house, you begin to notice, has its off-duty hours and its dust sheets. Even splendor is allowed to sleep. Even the mirror gets its eyes closed. Listen now to the house itself going to bed around the bedchamber, floor by floor, the way great houses do. You have heard this settling in a country manor and a grand hotel with me. Here it has a court accent, but the same grammar. Below, the pages walk the drawing rooms, putting out candles, and candle discipline in a royal house is a religion. Every flame accounted for, every wick snuffed with the long-handled snuffers, the used ends gathered. They are a perquisite too, down another ladder of custom, and will light humbler rooms than these. The fires are banked and guarded, the fenders set close. In a house full of children and paper and 200 sleeping souls, fire is the one fear this gentle place permits itself, and it is managed the way all good fears are, by ritual. The great doors are barred. The porter at his lodge has his own night watch, a London cousin of one we have kept elsewhere, and in the court, below the first round of the night watchman, Mr. Herald goes by with his lantern and his unhurried boots. His half-hourly call the hour and the weather, and all's well will thread the whole night like a slow stitch, past 11 o'clock and a fair night. The Queen likes to hear it. Most of the house has never once woken for it in 20 years. That is what the call is for a sound designed to be slept through, proof at half-hour intervals that nothing needs your eyes. Up the back stairs, the last traffic of the day runs quietly dry, hot water going up in cans, boots coming down, a maid with a candle lighting another maid with a candle along the attic corridor, where the household sleeps two to a room under the leads. Mr. Quennell, page of the back stairs, takes his post on the landing outside the Queen's apartments, his bench, his lamp, his list of who may pass, which at this hour is nobody. The King, whose own apartments lie on the other side of the house, plainer than a colonel's, has kept his own early ceremony. He is abed by 11 most nights of his life, and the house is proud of it the way other houses are proud of a ghost. By 11:30, the Queen's house stands dark to the park, showing only the porter's lamp, the landing lamps on the stairs, and if you knew which second-floor window to watch, one faint gold seam at the edge of a shutter, the bedchamber, where the fire is low, the Queen is saying her prayers, and Mrs. Allonby is lighting the one flame that will now outlast every other light in the house, since the house has just counted its candles to bed. Count with it, for nothing divides this age from ours so absolutely as its light, and nothing explains its night so well. Every lit room you have walked tonight is lit by fire on a stick, wax at the top of the house, tallow at the bottom, oil in the lamps at the doors, rushlight in the garrets of the poor beyond the park wall, a whole civilization of small flames, each one bought, carried, tended, guarded, snuffed, and accounted for. The economics are as steep as a cathedral. Good beeswax candles, honey-coloured, sweet-burning, steady cost so dear that burning four together of an ordinary evening is quiet wealth, and a chandeliered ballroom blazing with 200 is an announcement audible across a county. Below stairs burns tallow, mutton fat candles, cheaper by far and smokier, with their faint kitchen smell. The age's nose reads instantly for what it is, the smell of economy. The wax ends from the staterooms descend, as we saw, by perquisite. The tallow ends descend further, and at the bottom of the ladder the rushlight, a dried rush dipped in fat, burning 20 minutes in its iron pinch, lights the cottager to bed as it lit his ancestors under the Plantagenets. Light in this world is precisely as graded as rank. You can read any room's place in the kingdom with your eyes shut, by smell and steadiness alone. And the craft of it. A candle is not a passive servant. It must be snuffed, the charred wick trimmed every few minutes with the little scissor tool, or the flame drowns itself in smoke and gutter. A room of 20 candles keeps a page in slow perpetual circulation, snuffers in hand, like a gardener deadheading. And the verb to snuff means the trimming, not the putting out, a distinction upon which the whole polish of an evening depends. Candles are managed like a stable, stored cool and dark in the chandlery, issued by tale against the housekeeper's book, matched for height in the branches, defended from draught, for a draught makes a candle gutter and weep its expensive self down its own side, and the wardrobe-trained eye can spot a badly placed candle across a ballroom with the pain of a physician spotting a limp. The best light in the house tonight is not the biggest. It is the little nightlight in the Queen's basin, engineered for endurance rather than brilliance, a small fat flame on a float, rationed to burn till morning, the tortoise of the whole candle kingdom. When you next flood a midnight kitchen with light at the flick of a wall, spare one thought for the age that bought its every lumen by the pound, and understand finally why its houses went to bed at 11. The day ended when the light became too dear to keep buying. Darkness in the 18th century is not an absence. It is the default state of the world, held back nightly, room by room, flame by paid-for flame, and the holding back is itself the watch, every candle a small sentry, every snuffer a corporal of the guard, and the night outside patient, enormous, and utterly certain of winning at last, which it does every night, the moment the last wick is pinched, and the house sleeps then inside the dark like a ship gone quiet inside the sea. 2 beds stand in the Queen's apartments, and the difference between them is a whole history of monarchy. In the state bedchamber, a room kept like a chapel, aired and dusted and almost never entered after dark, stands the state bed. A tremendous architecture of carved and gilded wood, plumed at its 4 corners, hung with embroidered silk worked by whole workshops for years, costing more than a warship's rigging. Nobody sleeps in it. Almost nobody ever has. It exists because for 1,000 years the royal bed was not furniture, but symbol, the visible throne of the dynasty's continuance, and the old courts of Europe built their whole ceremonial around it. The French king rose from and retired to his bed in public, in tears of witnessed ritual. The bedchamber railed like a sanctuary, and the right to hand a royal shirt across that rail was fought over by dukes. We watched that machine burn its 10,000 candles through one whole night together and marveled at it. The English, who watched it for a century from across the water, took quiet national pride in wanting none of it. The English state bed became what it remains tonight, a magnificent retired symbol visited by housemaids with feather brushes, in which the dynasty is represented but never unconscious. And through the door, in the true bedchamber, the bed that is slept in, a good plain canopied bed, feather mattresses shaken every morning by 4 arms, fine linen sheets smelling of lavender from presses we have visited, blankets, a white counterpane, warmed tonight by the pan and by proximity to a well-kept fire, a gentlewoman's bed, a little larger, that is all. The Queen of Great Britain sleeps in comfort, a prosperous merchant's wife would recognize exactly, and this, the household will tell you, is not parsimony, but the whole point of this reign. The King and Queen have drawn a firm line between the crown, which must glitter, and the family, which must live. The glitter is stored in the staterooms and brought out on the great days, and behind it the family keeps farm hours and plain beds, and calls itself in private the plainest gentlefolk in England. The state bed gets the poets, the plain bed gets the sleep, and the lady-in-waiting who must curtsy to the first and smooth the second has always known which of the two is the honest one. At midnight the Queen is asleep. It comes as it comes to the fortunate, the book lowered, the last murmured word to her woman good night, Allenby the candle by the bed put out, leaving its nightlight burning in the basin. 10 minutes of the small adjustments of a settling sleeper, then the long, even breathing that is the true anthem of this channel, the sound every keeper we have ever sat beside is employed to protect. Mrs. Allenby stands a moment in the middle of the room, as she has stood at this moment 200 times, and takes the night's bearings. Fire low and safe behind its guard, nightlight afloat and steady in its silver basin of water, a flame set in water, the old wise nursery trick, so that if it falls it drowns, shutters fast, door to the landing locked, key on the inside, door to her own little chamber ajar. The watch in its stand says 12:05. The room is warm, high, shadowy, enormous, a bedchamber built for ceremony, now holding one sleeping woman and one waking one, and the silence in it has the furred, upholstered quality of silence in rooms lined with hangings, a silence you can lean against. She puts a small log on with tongs, soundlessly, banks it just so, and goes to her chair, the watching chair. Every trade has its throne, and this is hers, a deep wing chair set between fire and door, angled so that one glance takes in the bed, the nightlight and the shutter seam, with a footstool, a shawl, a work-basket, and a shaded candle of her own on the little table. Here she will pass the night in the keeper's state we have learned by heart in inn and nursery and hotel hall. 9 parts rest, 1 part listening, the ear cocked past the fire's small talk for the only sounds that are hers to answer. The Queen turning, the Queen waking, the Queen's voice. Some nights there is a summons, a light wanted, a draught of barley water, a Queen lying awake at 3, wishing to hear a chapter read in a low voice until the sentences blur. More often there is nothing, night after night of beautifully accomplished nothing, and the office consists of being ready for the summons that does not come. Miss Feversham, admitted on stockinged feet at 12:30, folds herself onto the footstool with the enormous solemnity of the young keeping their first watch, and whispers the question every apprentice keeper has asked at every fireside in this series: what do we do now? And Mrs. Allenby gives the answer the innkeeper gave, and the nanny, and the porter, and every lighthouse in this catalogue. Now, my dear, we keep still, and let her sleep make the time pass for us. Beyond the locked door, the house is not empty. It is layered, and the night layer of a royal house is a small nocturnal parish worth a lamplit tour. On the landing, Mr. Quennell on his bench. The pages of the backstairs are the palace's connective tissue, men in dark livery who spend their lives on thresholds carrying, announcing, guarding, waiting, and the night page's whole duty is to be a human bell wire. Should the Queen's bell ring and her woman need anything from the sleeping house, a doctor, hot water, the housekeeper, it is Quennell who goes soft-footed down the dark stairs and wakes exactly the right person and nobody else. The art of waking exactly the right person, and nobody else is, if you think of it, half of civilization. Below him, the porter in his lodge by the barred door, with his lamp and his list. In the offices, the watching cook keeps the stockpot's little brother company. Along the attic floor, the maids sleep their short, deep sleeps. And outside, stitching it all together, Mr. Herald's rounds lantern staff call past 1 o'clock, and a still nighter sound by now so much a part of the house's sleep that if he fell silent, 100 dreamers would stir without knowing why. And scattered through the house the other watchers of the Queen's own side, for Mrs. Allonby is one thread in a nightly web. The King's side keeps its own page on its own landing. In the nursery wing, a whole small kingdom, we know the customs of the night nurses keep the youngest princes and princesses exactly as our nanny kept hers. Night lights afloat, fires guarded, the wet nurse's chair creaking its slow creak. The elder princesses' women sleep within call of their doors. Down at the stables, an ostler drowses among the great warm shapes of the carriage horses. Even the equerries, the king's gentlemen, done with their loud supper, post one of their number within reach of a bell, in case the knight should want a horseman. Count them and you find perhaps a dozen souls officially awake or half awake in and about this one house, a constellation of small lamps around 2 sleeping monarchs and their sleeping children, and not one of the dozen thinks of it as remarkable. It is only the ancient sensible arithmetic of great households. Sleep is the treasure, watchers are the price. The price is paid nightly, in shifts forever. You are inside the arithmetic tonight, on the warm side of it. It is a good place to grow drowsy. The Queen is asleep. Her jewels in their own fashion are sleeping too, and their night is worth a page, for jewels in this age lead lives as regulated as courtiers. The pieces of an ordinary evening went to bed before their mistress, each into its fitted case, velvet-throated, shaped to its stones like a nest to its bird, each case into the wardrobe's strong closet, an iron-doored press whose key rides on Mrs. Yardley's chatelaine by day and sleeps under her pillow by night, quite literally. The wardrobe women have slept over the Queen's diamonds since before anyone now living held the office, and would as soon leave a child unattended. The great pieces, the state jewels, the stomacher that armours the whole front of a court gown in brilliance, the nuptial crown live at another remove, in the jeweller's strong room and the older vaults, visited like state prisoners on the eve of the great days, fetched under escort, worn for 6 blazing hours, counted twice and returned. A queen's jewels, the household will tell you, are less like ornaments than like a navy, mostly in harbour, maintained by professionals, and put to sea only on occasions of state. The stones have their biographies, and the bedchamber knows them as it knows the family trees of its neighbours. The heart of the collection came with the Queen herself, 25 years ago, a girl of 17 from a small North German court, tossed 9 days on the North Sea in an autumn gale, who, the story is treasured, practiced her English exercises and played the harpsichord to the heaving cabin to keep her lady's spirits up, and stepped ashore at Harwich to be married within the week, wearing on her wedding day diamonds that half of London queued to read about. Those wedding jewels, the little nuptial crown, the stomacher, the drop earrings, are the collection's old guard. Around them have gathered the accumulations of a reign, birthday gifts, mourning pieces bright with somebody's grandmother's stones reset. The pearls the princesses will divide someday, each pearl already the subject of gentle nursery diplomacy. Twice a year the jeweller's men come to the wardrobe like physicians on a round, the settings inspected claw by claw, the pearls restrung on new silk before the old silk thinks of failing, the whole inventory read against the book while everyone in the room affects calm. And for travel, there is paste-fine false stones set exactly like the true, worn on the road while the navy stays in harbour, an economy of prudence the age thinks no shame at all, since by candlelight, as every dowager cheerfully admits, nobody living can tell, and half the blaze of any given ballroom is honest glass doing its patriotic best. Tonight, the true stones lie in their velvet dark behind the iron door, each in its little bed, the chatelaine's key warm under a sleeping pillow, the most guarded sleepers in the house, and the only ones who will not dream. The office holding the candle tonight is old, older than this house, older than this dynasty, nearly as old as the idea of a queen and its history, told low, is a good stare down toward sleep. In the beginning it is simply the chamber. The medieval queen lived, ate, prayed and slept in one great room with her women around her, and her women slept in it too, on truckle beds, on pallets by the door, a warm human hedge between the royal bed and the world. Privacy had not been invented, presence was the point. A medieval lady of the chamber carried the candle, tasted the wine, warmed the sheets with hot stones, and slept across the threshold like a faithful geographic fact. And when the age of separate rooms arrived, she moved with the furniture into the antechamber, then the closet, then the little chamber beside, receding one room at a time as queens gained the strange new luxury of being alone, but never receding past the reach of a bell. The Tudor court gave the office its English titles and its ladder the bedchamber above the privy chamber, the ranks we counted at this evening's card table, already in place 2 centuries ago, and gave it too its lasting reputation for secrecy. For the bedchamber of a Tudor queen was the one room in England where policy could not follow, and what her women knew they famously did not say. The Stuarts made the office grand and contested, the first Georges made it German and practical, and all the while, downstream of the thrones and the treaties, the actual nightly work never altered by one candle's breadth. Some gentlewoman, some chair, some fire, some listening, dress the office in a farthingale or a sack gown, call her damsel or woman of the bedchamber. The figure in the chair is continuous, a 200-year relay of watchers passing the same warming pan, the same nightlight, the same discretion, hand to hand down the centuries, to Mrs. Allenby, who received it from a Mrs. Howell, who is retired now to Twickenham and grows O-Rick-U-LAHS, and who received it in her turn from a woman born under Queen Anne. And the relay runs sideways as well as back. Every court in Europe keeps its version tonight. In Vienna, the Empress's ladies keep a watch so like this one that the two households could exchange staff by morning and no queen would wake to a difference. In Madrid, in Petersburg, in Naples, the same nightlight burns in a different silver. Versailles, grander, always grander, posts its femme de chambre on a folding bed inside the royal chamber itself, the old medieval way, presents to the last. The sisterhood has no correspondence, no congress, no name for itself. It needs none. The office is the language. A queen is a woman who is never quite allowed to be alone. A lady in waiting is the shape that mercy takes, and mercy, it turns out, has kept essentially the same job description since the 12th century. Miss Feversham, hearing all this from the footstool, whispers that it is strange to be the newest link in so long a chain. Not strange, says Mrs. Allenby, comfortable, and puts on another log, and the chain, unbroken from the Plantagenets to this particular Tuesday, holds up one more night. Once in the deep of the night, the woman in waiting makes her round, not of the whole house, which has its own keepers, but of the Queen's apartments, the little kingdom behind the locked landing door, and Mrs. Allenby makes it at one, shaded candle in hand, Miss Feversham at her shoulder learning the route, out of the bedchamber by the inner door, leaving it ajar, through the dressing room where the fire is dead grey and safe, and the mirrors hold the candle as a slow goldfish swimming down a dark aquarium. The dressing table with its silver furniture put to bed under muslin, the Queen's day writing desk, locked, with tomorrow's letters waiting in its dark like seeds. Into the wardrobe country, for the nightly catechism of the presses hasp shut, no smell but cedar and lavender, no mouse in the traps. The wardrobe wages eternal patient war, and a mouse in the lace drawer is the nearest thing to a crisis this corridor has known since the reign began. Through the state bedchamber last, because it lies at the end. And this is the strangest station of the round, the room nobody uses, kept perfect for nobody. The great plumed bed standing in the candle shadow like a moored ship of state, the air chill and church-like. Miss Feversham always shivers here, agreeably, and Mrs. Allonby always says the same thing. Nothing in this room ever happens, my dear. That is what it is for. Back through the warm rooms, checking as she goes the small housekeeping of the night, a shutter bar reseated, a guard screen a half-inch closer to a hearth, the barley water jug refilled from the pantry cupboard in her own little chamber, where her own narrow bed waits for the half-sleep she will take toward morning. This round, 5 minutes at the sentry's pace, is the bedchamber's copy of a ritual we have now watched in every kind of house that keeps the night. The lighthouse keepers climb, the innkeepers pass through the taproom, the porter's tour of the marble hall, the nanny's tour of the cots. The premises differ, the office never does. The round is how the watcher tells the house I am awake and yours, and how the house tells the watcher all is well, and something in the human animal is so soothed by that exchange that merely hearing it described as you are hearing it now, warm in the dark, loosens the day's grip on the shoulders. The candle comes back to the watching chair at 1:10. The Queen has not stirred. The fire takes another small log. The watch resumes its throne. The finest remembered chapter this court can offer, a sleepless hour, is overhead, because this rain, alone among the rains, keeps a private door open onto the night sky. The king is mad for the stars. The word the age uses is fond, and it undersells him. He has built at Kew his own observatory, keeps his own instruments of brass and mahogany, and 5 years ago now, in 1781, had the incomparable luck to be on the throne when a Hanoverian organist turned telescope maker in Bath, one William Herschel, found wandering in the constellation Gemini a new planet, the first new planet in recorded time, the first world added to the sky since shepherds began naming it. Herschel, loyal and canny in equal parts, proposed to call it the Georgian star. The king, enchanted, gave him a pension, a house near Windsor, and a simple commission to come on clear nights and show the family the heavens. So there have been evenings at Windsor, and the household hoards them, when the terrace ritual we shall remember in a moment turned upward. The great telescope carried out on the grass, the tube swung to the sky by the quiet Hanoverian and his sister Caroline, herself a comet hunter of genius. The first woman in England salaried for science, and a Queen of Great Britain, in a shawl, taking her turn at the eyepiece between her children, looking at the mountains of the moon. The princesses saw Saturn ringed like a jewel. The king, who can be silent about nothing he loves, talked of double stars to an equerry backed helplessly against a yew hedge. And far down the sky, the new planet which the world, ungrateful to its patron, will end by calling Uranus, swam in its slow ellipse, 30 years to a lap, unbothered. Herschel is building now, at Snuff, a telescope 40 feet long, the largest instrument on Earth, on royal money. The age finds it half sublime and half comic. The king simply goes and stands inside the unfinished tube, delighted, the way other kings have stood in captured cities. Remember him that way tonight, a stout, kind, punctual man on a dark lawn, showing his children the rings of Saturn, and remember that above the shutters of the bedchamber where our watch sits sewing, the same sky is turning the same slow wheel and needs no watchman at all. Or rather is itself the oldest night watch there is, the stars going their rounds, calling no hours, keeping the whole dark house of the world. One floor of this house never quite sleeps, though nobody is awake in it, and the rounds candle always pauses at the head of the back stairs to feel it there, the library floor. The king has built along the garden front, room after room of books, the great octagon with its gallery, the tall rooms opening one into the next, 60,000 volumes and growing, bought steadily, catalogued lovingly, the finest library any English king has ever gathered. And he has built it on a principle that would astonish the grander courts. It is open. Any respectable scholar may apply, and does. Learned men unknown to the household sit daily under the librarian's eye among the king's books, for the king holds, he has said it plainly, that a library that is not used is a dead thing, and that he did not gather books to entomb them. The age tells, and the household confirms, the best story of the principle in action. Dr. Johnson himself, the great lexicographer, reading here one afternoon some years ago, and the king, hearing of it, coming in quietly by his own door to talk with him, the two of them, crown and dictionary, standing among the shelves discussing books like two collectors at a sale, and Johnson afterward, who bowed to no man's arguments, declaring that he had seen the finest gentleman in England. The household keeps the story the way the wardrobe keeps lace, folded carefully, brought out on good occasions. By night, the library is the stillest country in the house, stiller than the staterooms, because its silence is furnished. 60,000 closed books breathing their leather and paste breath into the dark, the globes in their stands like two sleeping planets, the long tables cleared, the librarian's catalogue locked, the garden fog pressing its grey cheek to the windows. The housemaids call it churchy and hurry their dusting. The pages like it. Mrs. Allenby, on her rare errands across that floor after dark, walks it slowly on purpose. A great library at 2 in the morning is one of the profound sleeping presences of the world, all that argument and adventure and doctrine lying perfectly quiet, shelved, patient, spine by spine, like the wardrobe's silk or the cellar's wine, the day's estate of the mind, folded and put away, keeping until wanted, and it will keep beyond this reign and this house. The king intends his library for the nation in the end, and the nation will get it. Those same shelves will stand one day at the heart of a museum, free to any reader alive, the plain king's plainest and most lasting monument. 60,000 books asleep beneath a sleeping queen. The house is a nested set of quietnesses tonight, and the candle on the landing burns at the center of them like a full stop. Beyond the shutters on the other side of the garden wall lies the oldest of the house's sleeping neighbours, St. James's Park, the king's own front green, and its night is worth a remembered walk. By day it is half London's parlour, the walks full of strollers, clerks eating bread and cheese under the elms, wet nurses in squadrons, and most famously, the cows, a herd kept in the park by ancient custom, milked on the spot at the Whitehall end, where for a penny a mug the milkwomen sell warm milk straight from the cow to anyone, invalids, children, fashionable ladies after a ball, the freshest drink in the metropolis, taken standing under trees within sight of 3 palaces. By night the park empties and changes state, the gates shut, the lamps along the mall burn their low chain of oil flames, the canal lies down flat and silver, and the whole rectangle becomes a great breathing darkness in the middle of the town, the cows folded near their sheds, the waterfowl tucked head under wing along the banks, Duck Island given over to its herons, and the deer at the Green Park end moving under the trees like grey thoughts. Where Birdcage Walk runs along the southern edge, the very name is a night story. An earlier king kept his aviary there, cages of nightingales and outlandish birds along the whole walk, and though the cages are a century gone, the name roosts on, so that sentries pace nightly down an avenue of remembered birdsong. The sentries are the park's night population, the boxes at the gates and along the walks, each with its footguard mitre-capped, changed through the dark hours by the relief tramping its small circuit from the palace, the challenge and countersign passing quiet as owl calls, the same all's well stitching the outside of the wall that the watchman's cry stitches within. Between rounds, a sentry's night is the park's night. Rain on his box, the lamp's small circles, a fox crossing the mall with its shadow, the abbey's bell and the horse guard's clock disagreeing gently about the quarter hour as they have for 50 years. And at the first grey the park performs its one daily miracle in reverse. The town's earliest walkers find the cows already at their milking, the herons already fishing, the gates already open for the park wakes before London does, being country at heart. A square mile of field and water that the city grew around and never digested, keeping farm hours behind its royal railings. The Queen's bedchamber and the park lie not 200 yards apart tonight. Two sleeping commons, one of silk, one of grass under the same rain, guarded by the same relief, and the watcher in the chair can hear, when the wind sets right, the one sound that carries from the older world to the newer, a moorhen on the canal, calling once, answered by nothing, content. At 2, the rain that has been rehearsing all evening arrives properly, a soft, business-like London rain on the shutters, and on the park beyond, and on the canvas of the sentry boxes by the gate, and under its brushwork, the house seems to draw its blankets higher. Above the Queen's apartments, muffled by a floor, the nursery wing rides the night like the upper deck of a ship. 13 children the King and Queen have now, from the grown prince down to the baby princess, and though the eldest keep their own establishments and their own hours of the Prince of Wales's hours, the less said before sleep the better, says Mrs. Allenby's raised eyebrow, and no more shall be said the young ones sleep up there in the nursery kingdom, in cots and small beds rank by rank, night lights afloat, nurses in their chairs, the whole apparatus of guarded childhood sleep we once spent a winter's night inside. The Queen's standing orders to the nursery are a mother's, not a monarch's. Plain food, cool rooms, much air, no terrors, no goblin stories, no threats of the dark from any nursemaid on pain of dismissal. The dark in this family is to be a friend with a lamp in it. Twice in a bad teething winter the Queen herself has gone up in a wrapping gown at 2 in the morning, to the scandal and secret delight of the night nurses. Tonight no one stirs above, and the ceiling over the bedchamber transmits only the deep-felt hush of a floor full of sleeping children, the most reassuring silence architecture can hold. And Windsor. On nights like this, the talk in the watching chair turns in whispers to the other house, because the household lives its year between the two. In summer, the court removes to Windsor, and life there is the same clock in country air. The King farming, genuinely farming, in gaiters, with opinions about turnips that he will share the princesses sketching on the slopes, and on fine evenings the terrace, the whole family walking out on the great stone walk below the castle wall, the band playing, and the public anyone decently dressed, farmers, tradesmen's wives, half the county admitted to stroll the same stones and see their King and Queen pass at arm's length, bowing, being bowed to, remarking on the weather. No guards to speak of, no ceremony but hats. Foreigners cannot believe it, the family cannot imagine otherwise. And when the light fails, the terrace empties itself down into the little town, and the castle windows come on one by one, and the watching chairs of Windsor receive their ladies, as this one receives ours, the same office in an older keep, with the curfew tower's great bell telling the hours over it since the 13th century. Summer will come again, says the fire, ticking. The rain says nothing it hasn't said for hours. Miss Feversham is asleep on the footstool, exactly as planned, and Mrs. Allenby does not wake her. Every household has one institution that is both its hearth and its trial, and in this one it is the tea table of Mrs. Schwellenberg. She came from Mecklenburg with the Queen a quarter century ago, Juliana Elizabeth Schwellenberg, keeper of the robes, senior of all the Queen's women, guardian of the wardrobe books, and of a table at which, by iron knightly custom, the ladies-in-waiting drink their tea and entertain the visiting gentlemen of the household. She is old now, gouty, homesick in 2 languages, devoted to the Queen with a ferocity no one doubts, and the memoirs are unanimous, and one famous diary in particular, of which in a moment she rules that tea-table-like weather. Some evenings all sunshine and Mecklenburg stories, some evenings a low-pressure system with cups. The younger ladies study her as sailors study the sky. Her pet frogs, she keeps frogs in a glass case and taps the glass to make them croak for company. And this is the single most famous fact about her. In London, divide the household into those who find it endearing and those who find it very German. And Mrs. Allenby, who has drunk perhaps 4,000 cups of tea at that table, holds both positions at once, fondly. The diary. For 5 years, one of the Queen's keepers of the robes has been Miss Frances Burney, Fanny Burney, the novelist, the most celebrated pen ever to fold itself into a court appointment. And though tonight is not her waiting is being written nightly in a journal that will one day let the whole world do what you are doing now, sit invisible in these very rooms after dark. It is she who has preserved the tea-table's weathers, the terrace evenings, the exact flavour of the Queen's kindness, and the exact length of a drawing-room hour. And when her diary is published long hence, the age will discover with a start that the truest history of a reign was kept not in the state papers, but in the watching chair, that the person best placed to see a monarchy plain is the woman holding the candle. Every keeper's log we have opened this year, the lighthouse book, the inn's day book, the porter's all quiet, has taught the same lesson. The night watch writes the honest record. Hers simply happens to be literature. Mrs. Allenby keeps no journal, thinks it privately a hazardous habit in a bedchamber, but she is glad in a complicated way that somewhere down the corridor of Tuesdays someone is writing the nights down. For the nights are, she would say, the best of the place, and nobody who only sees the drawing rooms will ever know it. The watching chair keeps a calendar as well as a clock, and on rainy deep night hours it likes to turn the year over, for the court's year is a wheel of fixed festivals, and the household lives by its turning. The hinge of it all is the King's birthday in June, the greatest drawing room of the year. The ode performed by the royal musicians for the poet laureate must produce his birthday verses annually, good or dreadful, and their setting is sung at court as solemnly as an anthem, and the household's private review of each year's ode is a good deal less solemn. The ball at St. James's in the evening, the new clothes. For by custom, the whole of society dresses new for the birthday, and the tailors and mantua makers of London live half their year on that 1 week. The guns in the park, the bells, the illuminations in the shop windows down the Strand. The Queen's birthday has its winter ball in January. Between the 2 poles the year swings through its lesser stations, the 12th night cake and cards, the Maundy Arms, the summer removal to Windsor and Kew we have already walked, the autumn return, and the wheel is so regular that the household tells time by it as farmers do by harvest. Miss Feversham's arrival is dated in everyone's memory as just after the birthday. Mrs. Yardley's famous quarrel with a silk mercer belongs to the year of the wet ode. And Christmas, kept here with a homesickness so gentle it has become a custom in its own right. The Queen keeps the Christmases of her Mecklenburg girlhood, the German feast, which makes far more of Christmas Eve than England yet does, the yew boughs brought indoors, and in her private rooms some years, a little candle-lit yew in the German fashion, hung with sweetmeats and small gifts for the children, each candle watched by a page with a wet sponge on a stick, which the princes consider the best office in the household and compete for shamelessly. England at large keeps its older, plainer Christmas church beef, greenery on the pews, and will not meet the candle tree for another 2 generations, so that this house on Christmas Eve is quietly ahead of its whole kingdom, 1 lit tree in 1 royal parlour, like a rehearsal of a future everyone will eventually attend. The household is given its boxes and its goose, the chapel is dressed, the nursery hangs its expectations, and the watching chair on Christmas night keeps exactly the watch it keeps tonight, for queens must sleep on feast nights too, and the nightlight takes no holidays. It is, Mrs. Allonby will tell you, the best watch of the year, the house full, the smells of cinnamon and green boughs on every landing. The children sleep upstairs, practically audible with anticipation, and the fire's small voice saying what the year's whole wheel says, turning again, 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 and all of it safe. The Queen's side has its sisterhood, the King's side keeps its brotherhood, and fairness and the tea table's best stories require one remembered visit before the still hour. The equerries, officers of the army and navy, gentlemen born, seconded from their regiments and ships to wait upon the King in rotation, as the ladies wait upon the Queen, a month at a time, one always in waiting, and their waiting is the athletic branch of the family trade. The King's day is a campaign of health, up before 6, at his papers by candlelight, and then the riding, for this King rides as other men breathe, hours of it, in most weathers, at a pace his household describes with respect, and their memoirs describe with feeling. The equerry in waiting rides at his shoulder through all of it, hunting mornings, farm inspections, the long, wet Windsor gallops, and arrives at dinner, as one of them famously groaned, with an appetite of no use to a man who must stand behind a chair. Their quarters are plain, their hours are the King's, their salary is thinner than the honour, and their compensation beyond the honour is the equerry's table, the household's second society, the late supper room where the day's aches are converted nightly into comedy, the glees are attempted, the Madeira circulates at exactly the pace discretion allows. And the stories, this house being blessedly short of scandal, are all about weather, horses, and the sublime, unstoppable punctuality of the best-natured master in Europe. Between the two societies, the ladies' tea table, the gentlemen's supper room, the household conducts its own gentle diplomacy, visits of ceremony and of choice, alliances of humour, the occasional courtship carried on across the boundary at the stately pace court life enforces, an engagement a season, the usual harvest, announced always at the tea table and toasted always at the supper room, in that order, by unwritten law older than anyone's memory of its writing. And at night, the two sides mirror each other down to the furniture, while Mrs. Allonby keeps her chair on the Queen's landing. The equerry in waiting sleeps on the King's side, within reach of his own bell, boots by the bed, half a soldier even in his dreams, for if the knight should want a horseman, a message ridden to Windsor, a doctor fetched at speed, it is he who goes, and the household's proudest boring statistic is how many years it has been since anybody had to. 2 watchfires then, one either side of the sleeping house, silk on the east stair, spurs on the west, and between them the whole family lies in the safety that has no drama to show for itself, which is the only kind worth the name. The tea table and the supper room disagree about nearly everything, comfortably forever. On the one point that matters, they have never differed. The households, the bells are answered, the watch hers or his, needle or saddle is kept. 3 o'clock, announced in series. First the chapel clock across the garden, then the watch on the night table a beat behind, then far off a parish church, and last Mr. Herald below, unhurried past 3 o'clock, and a rainy night. This is the bottom of the night, the hour the trade in every house we have kept calls the still hour, and the bedchamber observes it with its own small communion. Mrs. Allonby sets the kettle, her own little copper kettle, privilege of the watching chamber on the trivet at the Embers, and presently there is tea, made soft-handed in the half-dark, 1 cup on the hearthstone for herself, and 1 carried to the footstool, where Miss Feversham surfaces just enough to drink it, which is the correct amount. No bread and butter at this hour, but the biscuit box the housekeeper leaves for the waiting plain Naples biscuits. The same reliable article in every century yields too, and the watch dines. The fire's light is down to a rich furnace rose behind the bars. The night light swims in its basin. The rain works. The queen sleeps the sound mid-ocean sleep of the deep small hours, a still shape under a white counterpane in a room so quiet that the tea being poured is an event, acoustically, on the scale of a waterfall. The small sounds, in fact, are the entertainment of the hour, and the watcher knows them all by name. The fires settle and soft collapse. The wainscot single knuckle crack as the house's timbers give up the last of the day's warmth. A coal cart impossibly early on the far side of the park wall. The ashes sifting in the grate with a sound like a mouse dressing. The watches tick, the rains wash, and under everything the breathing, the one sound that is the point of all the others. Being awake at 3 in a sleeping house frightens some people. The trade knows better. The house at 3 is not empty. It is full of accomplished sleep, stacked in warm rooms in every direction, the day's people all safely stowed like the wardrobe's silk, and the watcher sits in the middle of the fullness like a woman in a granary. Mrs. Allenby's thoughts at this hour, 200 watchers deep, have worn themselves the smooth channels all keepers' thoughts wear. A little back a girl in a Norfolk parsonage, hearing her appointment read from a letter. A little forward the cottage at Richmond she will retire to, some day, some year, with a pension and her tea things, and mostly, restfully, nowhere at all. The hands folded, the fire watched, the mind gone quiet as the room awake the way embers are lit. If you have followed our nights all year, you know this hour by now from the inside of 5 different chairs. It is always the same hour. That is its whole kindness. What does it pay, this life of silk and sitting up? For the age is frank about money, and we may be too. A woman of the bedchamber has £300 a year, a clergyman's living, no fortune, but with board, lodging, candle and coal all found, it banks. A maid of honour, 200, and the age's favourite footnote, the rank of a baron's daughter upon marriage, which is to say the court gives a girl precedence as a dowry. Add the perquisites we have counted in the wardrobe, add the pension, for this queen looks after her old servants and everyone knows it. Mrs. Delany's house at Windsor is the whole policy in miniature. Add the intangibles that do not bank but matter, the best music in England nightly, the first sight of every wonder from a new planet to a new poem, and a place. This is the true wage, and every memoir ends by confessing it inside a family, at the exact warm centre of the age. Against it set the costs, honestly, the hours, the standing, the surrender of one's own establishment, one's own society, very often one's own marrying years, the tea table on its stormy evenings, the peculiar fatigue of a life lived perpetually in someone else's house, someone else's schedule, someone else's story. It is a bargain, like every post we have examined by lamplight this year, from the lighthouse to the hotel desk, and like those, it is struck on the whole, willingly, by people suited to it, who could tell you its price to the shilling, and would not, at the last, trade it. For there is a sisterhood of the watching chair, as real as the porter's brotherhood and older. The bedchamber women of every court in Europe know each other's office without a word of shared language, the same locked door, the same nightlight, the same art of the noiseless kettle, the same iron discretion. What the bedchamber sees, the bedchamber keeps. It is the first law of the sisterhood and the reason queens can sleep. A queen's woman sees the crown off. She sees the grey hair down. She sees the human being that the age of portraits never painted, and the measure of the office, kept faithfully for centuries by hundreds of otherwise ordinary gentlewomen, is that we know almost nothing of what they saw. The diaries that survive because they are kind. The rest is silence, of the honourable sort, the same silence the porter ruled under all quiet, the same the nanny kept on the nursery stairs. It is the great paradox of the waiting trades. Their perfect practitioners are invisible even to history. Tonight, for once, one of them has been watched at her watching. She would say, pouring the last of the tea, not looking up, that we make a great deal too much of it, and that the Queen, God bless her, sleeps exactly as well on Mrs. Brereton's weeks. That is the sisterhood's voice precisely. Believe the modesty, and believe the 200 knights behind it. Among the offices of the watching chair, one deserves its own remembered page. The reading. To read aloud to the Queen in the carriage, at the work table, and above all at night, when sleep is slow, is a formal duty of her women, listed as gravely in the household's understanding as the care of the jewels. And it makes the bedchamber, among everything else it is, a small nightly library service. The night table's book is chosen with a pharmacist's care. Sermons stand first, the age's great soothing literature, and meant as such, the measured divines, Blair and his brethren, whose balanced sentences are engineered like minuets and can be trusted to raise no pulse. Then travels, the Queen's favourite waking genre voyages, gardens of the tropics, accounts of countries she will never see governed from the room next door, then history of the stately kind, and then, admitted on their merits and watched like clever guests, the novels. For the novel is the age's young giant, still faintly disreputable in strict houses, but this court surrendered honourably some years ago, and the story of the surrender is the household's favourite literary anecdote. A small anonymous novel called Eve, Lena, the talk of London one season, was discovered to be the work of a shy young woman of no fortune, daughter of the music historian Dr. Burney. The Queen read it and was charmed. The King read it and laughed aloud, which the pages reported up and down the back stairs within the hour. And in the fullness of time, the shy novelist herself was invited into the household, where she keeps the robes and the journal we spoke of down the corridor of Tuesdays. This family does not merely read books. Occasionally it hires them. The craft of night reading is its own quiet art, and Mrs. Allonby is, by 200 nights of practice, a master of it. The voice pitched just above the fires, the tempo dropped a shade below the daytimes, the sentences allowed to lean on their commas, the page turned against the thumb so it does not crack the silence. One does not read to be attended to, that is daytime reading. One reads to be drifted from. The words a handrail the listener holds ever more lightly going down, and the reader listening past her own voice the whole while for the change in the breathing that means the handrail may be let go. Then the voice walks itself down to a murmur, finishes the sentence never mid-sentence on principle. Even sleep deserves grammar, and closes the book on a ribbon. It is the same art the nanny practiced on the nursery floor, with the same result and smaller words. It is what you are practicing now, listening to this. And the trade's one great secret is that the book hardly matters. What matters is the voice going on, unalarmed, unhurried proof, sentence by sentence, that the world can be trusted till morning. The sermons know it. The divines built their cadences for exactly this hour. The bedside book is a nightlight made of language, a small steady flame on a float of paper, burning down the dark, rationed to last. While the tea cools, send the mind out across the dark town and county to the other royal houses, for the crown keeps many roofs, and at 3 in the morning, every one of them is a different flavour of asleep. Nearest up the mall, Old St. James's, the official palace, red brick and crooked courts, Tudor to its chimneys, where the drawing rooms are held and almost nobody lives a palace that works days, like its own clerk. Its knights belong to the sentries at the gates, calling their all's-wells to each other across Colour Court, and to the staterooms standing dark in their gilt, waiting for Thursday. Westward up the river, Kew, the little red Dutch house among its gardens, the family's summer toy box, shuttered now against the autumn, its exotic greenhouses breathing warm and green in the dark, for the stove fires of the botanic houses are kept all night, all winter, and a boy sleeps by them. Somewhere in that moist dark the Queen's rarities from the ends of the earth unfurl by lamplight with nobody watching, which is somehow one of the most restful facts in the kingdom. Windsor, west again, the great grey castle above its town, the curfew bell telling the hours as it has since the 13th century, the terrace empty in the rain, the round tower riding the night like the stern castle of England itself, and Hampton Court downriver, which sleeps differently from them all, for the court left it 50 years ago and never came back, and the vast Tudor and Wren Palace has been given over, apartment by apartment, to the Crown's pensioners, the grace and favour ladies, widows of admirals and generals and deans, each with her lodging in some corner of the old splendour, her few good pieces of furniture adrift in rooms built for cardinals, her cat, her tea things, her window on Fountain Court. 300 years of state have gone quiet there, into a kind of collegiate old age, the great kitchens cold, the tennis court echoing to pigeons, and along the worn courtyards at night a scattering of small lit windows where the widows keep their late fires, a whole almshouse of history dozing by the Thames. The household speaks of Hampton Court the way one speaks of a grandmother's house, fondly, a little wistfully, glad it is there, glad not to live in it. Every great institution the bedchamber knows needs somewhere for its evenings to go. The wheel that will one day carry Mrs. Allonby to her Richmond cottage carries duchesses too, in the end, to Fountain Court. And the same night-watch arithmetic holds over them all: porters at the gates, watchmen in the courts, night lights in the windows of the Crown keeping its keepers, roof by roof, all the way down the river and all the way down the years. 4 o'clock, the rain done, the world rinsed and dripping, and the night at its turning that felt hinge, in every watch we have kept, where the hours stop being yesterdays and become tomorrows. The signs arrive on schedule, small and unanswerable, the first market cart on the road beyond the park wall, hours early, jingling toward Covent Garden through the dark with the day's cabbages under wet canvas, the identical cart, Mrs. Allonby would swear, that has opened every morning of her waiting life. A cock somewhere in the mews, premature, taken up half-heartedly by another and dropped, the air at the shutter seam turning from night damp to morning damp, a difference no instrument measures and every watcher knows. In the basin the nightlight stands lower now, its little flame riding its reflection. The fire is grey at the edges with its first true ash. Miss Feversham sleeps on the footstool in the total commitment of 19. Mrs. Allonby spreads her own shawl over her, which is against no rule that matters, and takes the last leg of the watch alone. And this is the hour every night of every watch this channel has ever kept, when the office thinks it's one long thought. She could not tell you when the thinking became a comfort rather than a labour. Somewhere in her second year, when the strangeness wore through and the shape underneath showed plain. The shape is this, that the world divides into those who sleep and those who mind the sleepers, that she chose her side of the line young, or it chose her, and that the line runs, this exact minute, through every house in the kingdom, through the lighthouse on its rock and the signal box on its bank, through the inn-yard and the nursery floor and the marble hall of the great hotel, through this bedchamber where a queen lies breathing, 11 feet away, one unbroken company of the appointed wakeful, holding the night up like a tent over everyone else. She will never meet the others. She knows them absolutely, and when her waiting ends, the cottage, the tea things, the pension, she knows what the trade has always known, that she will go on waking at 3, out of habit become nature, to listen for a moment, contentedly, to nothing, and that the nothing will report to her as it reports tonight. All's well, the fires are safe, the house is down, the watch is kept. The chapel clock agrees, 4:15. Below in the court, splashing gently, Mr. Herald. Past 4 o'clock, and a fine morning. Because every watch is defined by its rare working nights, let Mrs. Allonby remember one for us. A night 2 winters ago, no calamity, nothing the histories will keep. Simply a night the Queen could not sleep, which happens to queens as it happens to you. It had been a long drawing-room day. The wind was wrong, the kind of fretting southwest wind that leans on chimneys and makes candle flames bow all evening. And at 1:30, the voice came quiet from the bed, in the tone every keeper knows, apology folded inside request. "Allonby, I am not asleep." And the office rose and went to work, in its settled order, its whole art being that there is an order and no surprise in it. The light first, the shaded candle lit from the nightlight and set where it warms the room's darkness without accusing it. The draught of barley water, the pillows turned cool side up, the counterpane squared for the body, the trade nose, takes its cues from linen. A remade bed argues half the case for sleep by itself. Then the low question, would your majesty be read to, and the sermons doing their measured work for 20 minutes, and when the sentences had not yet won, the closed book, and the older remedy, talk. Not conversation, the night has no opinions, but the low, aimless, remembering voice. And it was Mecklenburg that night, as it usually is, the small court of her girlhood, snow to the windowsills at Christmas, the stoves of German houses, how sensible, she has said for 25 years, and how the English will never learn it. Her brothers skating, the 9 days of the North Sea, 17 years old, telling her frightened ladies it would pass, the first sight of the Thames at Harwich, brown and enormous, and the whole of England, waiting like an examination she had studied for in the wrong subjects. And somewhere in the third telling of the skating, the voice from the bed, slower now, the words spacing themselves, the change came that the watcher's ear is tuned for above every other sound on earth. The sentence that does not finish, the breath that lengthens past speech. And Mrs. Allonby sat on, still as furniture, 10 minutes more, then pinched her candle and went back to the chair. That is the whole story. No history will record that night. The book next morning said what it always says. But that is the office, seen once at full work, sleep lost, found and restored, between 1:30 and 2:15, by warm water, cool linen, old snow, and a voice. And if the remedies sound familiar, they should. They are the ones this channel has been applying to you, in this same order all year. The trade secrets are 200 years old, and they are all gentle, and they work as well tonight, on you, as they worked that winter on a queen. One more remembering, while the fine morning gathers itself the removals. For twice a year at least, this entire nested world of ours packs itself into wagons and goes somewhere else. And the move of a royal household is one of the great unsung logistics of the age. When the court removes to Windsor for the summer, the wardrobe country alone fills carts. The presses emptied into travelling trunks lined with oilcloth, the gowns in their linen shrouds laid in like sleeping passengers, the lace in flat boxes that ride on someone's knees the whole way. The plate goes under guard. The library sends a hamper of the King's current reading, chosen by the librarian with the gravity of a man provisioning an expedition. The nursery moves like a small nation, cots, nightlights, rocking horses, the accumulated indispensable rubble of 13 childhoods, and the kitchen sends its battery ahead by a day, so that the first Windsor dinner comes off copper that arrived yesterday. Down the western road goes the procession in installments, baggage wagons and carts, the servants' coaches, the led horses, the Queen's own carriages last, and villagers along the way stand at their gates to watch the King's household go by, as their grandfathers watched it, waving at the nursery coach especially, which waves back with royal enthusiasm and no dignity whatever. and at each end of every move, the same two rituals, which belong to our night because they are its bookends writ large. The house being left is put to sleep, chandeliers bagged in Holland, furniture sheeted into a company of pale ghosts, carpets rolled, clocks allowed to run down all but one, somewhere which the skeleton staff keeps wound on the principle every housekeeper holds without ever having been taught it, that a house with no clock going is not asleep, but dead, shutters barred, and the caretaking few settling into their echoing quiet like winter bees. And the house being arrived at is woken, aired for a week beforehand, fires lit in every room to breathe the damp out of it, beds seasoned with warming pans and slept in by housemaids before any royal person may risk them an office, the maids report on with relish, larders provisioned, clocks set going, and on the last evening before the family comes, the housekeeper walking every floor at dusk, candle in hand, the whole house warm and lit and empty, listening to it the way a shipwright listens to a hull. Houses this household believes are creatures. They sleep, they wake, they sicken if neglected, they answer to care. It is the belief underneath every night we have ever kept together, and twice a year the removal proves it on the grand scale, a whole palace tucked in like a child, another shaken gently awake, and the family carried between them down summer roads, asleep in their coaches, watched even there. At 5 the house begins again from the bottom, as houses do. You know this music now. It is the same dawn fugue in every great house we have kept, scored here for a court. Deepest first, the kitchen fires broken open and fed, the red breathing turned back to working flame, the bakehouse at its rolls, the still room's kettles on. Then the housemaids' floor-by-floor tide grates raked and blacked and laid and lit, 100 small new fires climbing the house room by room like lamps being lit in reverse. The shutters of the ground floor opening one pair at a time, each admitting its slab of grey pearl morning. The smell of the house turning over from snuffed candle and cold hearth to wood smoke, hot iron and bread. The back stairs fill with cans of hot water going up. The wardrobe country wakes early and particularly Mrs. Yardley's underwomen airing the day's linen at the wardrobe fire, the day gown chosen last night given its final pressing so that everything that will touch the Queen at 8 has spent an hour first at a hearth. The pages change guard, Quennell yawning off to his breakfast and his bed. Mr. Herald's last call past 6 o'clock, and a fair morning, all's well, hands the outside night formally over to the sparrows, who take it up at once and much less quietly. In the bedchamber, the watch performs its dawn offices in the exact reverse of midnight's, shutters unbarred on the first seam of parklight, grey and silver, the elms dripping diamonds, the nightlight having done what nightlights do, which is outlast the need for themselves, pinched out at last, a thread of sweet wax smoke straightening in the new air, the fire relayed to brightness, the kettle on for the Queen's first tray. Mrs. Allonby, who has washed her face and repinned her hair in her little chamber in 6 minutes flat, 200 nights teach economies, wakes Miss Feversham with the traditional mercy of the trade, a hand on the shoulder and the word morning, and sends her off along the corridor to her own bed, stocking feet, shoes in hand, a veteran of one whole watch, and asleep again before the chapel clock says 7. And at 7:30, the sounds through the inner door, for which the whole night was a preface, the Queen waking the sigh, the turn, the small bell. Mrs. Allonby goes in with the morning on a tray, the chocolate, the first light, the drawn curtain, the day's weather announced from the window as her office has announced it to Queens since offices began. Good morning, Your Majesty. A fine morning after the rain. The night passed, and nothing in it. Which is the bedchamber's way of laying, at the foot of the bed, the only tribute it deals in, 8 hours, unbroken, delivered whole. And now, briefly, the coucher runs backward and becomes the toilette, the dressing of a queen, the night ceremony played in reverse and in daylight. and the last office of Mrs. Allonby's night. The hair first, brushed and dressed over its cushion while the chocolate is drunk. The Queen reading her early letters the while, for she is of the school that believes a day mounted early is half won. Then the wardrobe's procession, shift and stays, the lacing drawn to the well-known marks, brisk morning percussion where midnight heard its slow petticoats, the day's round gown warm from the wardrobe fire, the lace tucker pinned, the small jewels of an ordinary Thursday out of their boxes and on. The hairdresser comes to finish and powder. The little dogs are admitted, uproarious, official. The Queen stands done in the window light, a small neat figure smelling of powder and orris, inspects the morning as if reviewing a well-turned-out regiment, and passes out of the bedchamber into her day prayers, the schoolroom, the household, the endless gentle business of it trailing women like a ship of the line leaving harbour. Behind her the bedchamber stands down. The bed is stripped to air, sheets to the laundry's snowy bureaucracy, the fire made up for the maids, the night table cleared, the basin emptied, the watching chair its cushion still holding the night's shape set square again for whoever holds it tonight. Mrs. Allonby writes the one line the bedchamber's book requires of her, the hour of retiring, the hour of waking. A quiet night, the sisterhood's whole literature, the all-quiet of her particular trade, and goes down the back stairs through the smell of breakfast to her own room, her own drawn curtains, her own bed at 8 in the morning, last sleeper of the old night, in step with the porter and the nanny and every keeper we have marched off duty at this hour all year. 6 nights of her waiting remain. The house roars gently on above its fires. In the park the first nursemaids are out with the first perambulators. The king is already at his letters. Somewhere upstairs a queen is asking after a seedling from Kew, of the night just ended, held up hour by hour, by a grey-haired gentlewoman in a wing chair the great world will never hear one word. That was the entire object. It is the oldest, quietest kind of success there is. And that is the night, the whole of one night, the last tea to the first chocolate, in the Queen's bedchamber at the Queen's house. But the morning belongs to the day's ladies. The night is still ours, and the rain has only just finished with it, somewhere behind us, where the hours are kept. Come back into it once more, slowly, and let it go by like rain on the shutters, one soft thing after another, going down. The Queen's house at dusk, brick and quiet at the end of the mall, the lamps lit one story at a time, one gold seam at a second-floor shutter, the evening room, the whisk-cards falling soft as leaves, the Queen's needle drawing its slow thread, handle moving through the talk like clouds crossing a mild sky, the last tea at 10, the instrument cases closing on 10,000 evenings, the family going up by candlelight, the coucher, the pins into their china dish like tiny rain, the stay lace drawn through its eyelets, the long grey hair brushed down by the fire, the jewels in their cases, the gown borne away like a resting swan, the wardrobe presses closing on cedar and lavender, the prayers at the little desk in the mother tongue, the warming pan drawn out at the perfect moment, the candles put out one by one, down to one, the nightlight afloat in its silver basin, a flame set in water so that if it falls, it drowns, the oldest wise trick in the nursery book, the watching chair between fire and door, the shawl, the work basket, the shaded candle, 9 parts rest, 1 part listening, the house going down floor by floor, the candles counted out, the fires banked behind their guards, the great door barred, the porter's lamp burning, the watchman below unhurried. Past 11 o'clock, and a fair night, a call designed to be slept through, the state bed in its cold, splendid room, moored like a ship nobody sails, and the plain bed through the door, warm, with a queen asleep in it, the page on his bench at the landing, the night nurses in the wing above, the ostler among the great warm horses, a constellation of small lamps around the sleeping house, the 1 o'clock round, the shaded candle swimming down the dark mirrors, the presses shut. Nothing in the stateroom ever happens. That is what it is for. The rain arriving properly at 2, the nursery floor above, transmitting only hush, 13 children deep, the ceiling breathing, the terrace at Windsor remembered, the band, the bows, the whole county strolling at arm's length from a king, the castle windows coming on one by one, the telescope on the dark lawn. Saturn ringed like a jewel, the new planet swimming its slow 30-year lap, the stars going their rounds, keeping the whole dark house of the world. 3 o'clock, the chapel clock, the watch, the parish bell, the watchman, the kettle at the embers, tea in the half-dark, 1 cup on the hearthstone, the small sounds by name, the fires settle, the wainscots knuckle crack, the ashes sifting, the breathing that is the point of all the others, the tea table remembered, sunshine and weather, the frogs in their glass case croaking for company, 4,000 cups drunk fondly, the diary being written down the corridor of Tuesdays, the truest history kept in the watching chair, the kind pages surviving, £300 a year and all found, the cast-off silk descending like soft rain, the sisterhood's first law, what the bedchamber sees, the bedchamber keeps, 4 o'clock the turning, the market cart jingling toward the dark, the cock premature in the mews, the shawl spread over the sleeping apprentice, the one long thought, those who sleep and those who mind the sleepers, the line running through every house in the kingdom, the unbroken company of the appointed wakeful. 5 o'clock, the house waking from the bottom, 100 small new fires climbing room by room, the smell turning to wood smoke and bread, the shutters opening on grey pearl light, the night light pinched out, its thread of sweet smoke straightening, the elms dripping diamonds over the park, the chocolate going in at 7:30. Good morning, Your Majesty. A fine morning after the rain. 8 hours unbroken, delivered whole. The book's one line. A quiet night. The whole literature of the sisterhood, and the watcher going down the back stairs to her own drawn curtains. Last sleeper of the old night, first of the new. Sleep now like the house, floor by floor. Let the day go out in you like the candles, one by one, down to one. The doors are locked, the fires are guarded, the nightlight rides its basin, the book is ruled. Somewhere tonight, it is always kept. Some bedchamber, some lodge, some lighthouse, some year. Someone steady in a chair, with one ear kept for the sleeping rooms. And if you are still drifting, stay for one more round of the candle, slower yet. For the night is long, and the house does not tire of being kept. Down the apartments once more, at the watcher's pace. The dressing-room mirrors, the muslin over the silver, the locked desk with tomorrow waiting in it like seeds. The wardrobe country, the gowns in their linen shrouds, the lace papered like pressed flowers, the hoops hung like bird cages in the dark, the stateroom cold and perfect, the plumed bed riding its shadow, nothing happening, beautifully, as designed. The warm rooms again, the guard screen a half-inch closer, the barley water refilled, the watch resuming its throne, the landing, the bench, the list that admits nobody, the art of waking exactly the right person and nobody else. The court below, the lantern crossing it slow, past 4 o'clock and a fine morning, the kitchen fires breathing red, the bakehouse at its rolls, the cans climbing the back stairs, the day gown warming at the wardrobe fire, the queen fathoms down, the king abed by 11 these 20 years, the princesses in their rows, the maids under the leads, the whole ship's company stowed and breathing, Mrs. Allonby in her chair, Miss Feversham under the shawl, Quinnell on his bench, Herald in the court, Yardley among the cedar presses, each at their station or their rest, 200 souls, one roof, one candle, breathing in and out, in and out. Slower now, the sound a palace is for. The rain finished, the park rinsed and dripping. The first cart gone by toward the market in the dark. The bars home, the guards set, the flame riding its water, cellar to attic all safe. The pen, the book, the small ruled line. A quiet night, a quiet night, a quiet night. Sleep well. The house is down. The watch is kept. The night light is burning in its silver basin. Good night. Sleep well. The house is down. The doors are locked. The night light is burning. quiet night, a quiet night. The watch is kept. The candle rides its water. 200 sleepers, safe till morning.